Hello everyone, how are you today? Thanks for joining me. Wherever you are, my name's Colin. I'll be your teacher today for this OET Writing for Nurses live class with E2 languages. Let's have your company. For those of you on Zoom, you can keep your comments, your feedback, your input in the chat box. I'll be very grateful. I always like to hear from you, but in the chat box if you don't mind. Rather than Q&A, just means that I don't have to open lots and lots of windows. So you'd be doing me an enormous favour. It is a chilly morning here in Melbourne. So yes, it is good morning for me. I think for a lot of you it is good evening or even good ridiculously early in the morning, because I know that we always get people in the Middle East sometimes at this time of day who are really in the middle of the night. Anyway, it's nice to have you. Thank you for being here. Hello to YouTube people as well. Always nice to, I do keep my eye on your comments too, but thank you. Zoom people, if you don't mind, keep your comments to the chat box. Thank you very much. Yes, good morning everyone, good morning. Lots of familiar names. A few things to tell you before we start. The power package is still valid. This is especially for you who have not yet chosen a package and are thinking about which one to go for. We've extended the power package deal. So if you've not chosen a package, think about doing the power package. It is $75 and it's really good value actually. Includes the 4-week study plan, access to live classes, a speaking and writing assessment, and a mock test with feedback, and it's valid for 6 months. So go for it. If you've not chosen one, this is the one for you. Move forwards. One thing that we offer, I mentioned already, is the writing feedback. Speaking, by the way, speaking feedback isn't valid for OET, only for other tests. We have writing feedback, and this is what it is. You have case notes, which you then plan and write for. You submit it through the E2 language platform. It is then evaluated and sent back with a comprehensive score report and feedback from a real human teacher. It's not spat out by a machine, although you are submitting it through the platform. It is analysed by a person. Okay, so I would strongly advise those of you who are thinking of taking on the challenge of the OET and you need to have the feedback of a person, we have the writing feedback built into our system. Another thing which we offer is the one-on-one tutorials done on Zoom, as everything is done on Zoom nowadays. But the one-on-one tutorials is a chance for you to spend 45 minutes with one of our team, another OET expert or myself, focusing on 1 or 2 areas of the OET that are of particular interest or concern to you. So if you've not thought about which course, which package to go for, power package, I recommend it. And writing feedback and one-on-one tutorials are 2 excellent reasons for doing that, in addition, of course, to the mini mock test. Mini mock test is exactly as it sounds, done entirely online through the E2 language platform, and covers all of the skills required for the actual test. Different to the real OET, which is a paper-based test. This is done through the platform, it's done online, and it's, I think, a very good window into your capabilities when it comes to the OET. Okay, so think about doing a mini mock test as well. I think you will get a great deal out of that too. Leaves you feeling more prepared, relaxed, and ready for the day. So in today's class, then, I'm going to test your English with a quiz. We will learn a method for completing the writing task. We'll analyze the task, we'll select the relevant case notes, we will plan out your writing, we'll then write the start of the letter, which is a fairly standard thing to do, and write the introductory paragraph and the request paragraph. So we are topping and tailing the letter with the introduction and the request. As anyone who's been here before will know, we focus generally on 1 or possibly 2 paragraphs in these classes because we can't go through the whole letter. But at the end, of course, we will share a model letter. So you'll be able to compare the model letter with the actual case notes that we've done with you. Then you can check out the criteria and we'll have another little quiz at the end. It's all very nice. So have a pen and paper handy. I think as you will on the day of the test, you will have a pen and paper handy 2, so have a pen and paper handy today. Those of you who want to, by all means, share your working out, your thinking in the comments box or in the chat box. Otherwise, don't worry, you can simulate it on the paper as you would in the actual test as well. I'm going to do a quiz in a moment, but let's first of all review some of those key tenses that there are in English language. 12 verb tenses. It's the top 5 in blue which are most commonly used. The present simple, as in Mr. Lin urgently requires your expert assistance. The present continuous, Ms. Adams is currently receiving. The present perfect, Miss Smith has been treated with cold compression therapy. The present perfect continuous, Mrs. Tran has been undertaking. And the past simple, Mr. Jones was admitted to St. Andrews 2 weeks after his operation. Just a reminder, if you don't mind, Zoom people to use the chat box. Okay. The other 7 are used. Don't think that they're not used just because they're in grey instead of blue. It's just the ones in the top 5 are the ones which I think come up against most commonly. So now you're going to have a little quiz. I will give you, well, actually, I'll give you a minute to finish off these 5 quiz questions, okay? Answers are provided for you, but you've got to choose the correct one. Good luck. Okay, thank you. Okay, let's have a look then at the answers here. Thanks for those of you who shared. They're all number 1. Interesting, isn't it? I'll correct that afterwards. So the answer to number 1, they're all number 1, but you get the idea. Ms. Chan requires your assistance with number 2. Forget that it says number 1. During his stay in hospital, Mr. Gold was supervised while performing daily activities. Number 3, Mrs. Springer uses her own front wheel walker. I guess that's number 4. Miss Carmody has been assessed as medically stable, but she will need. And number 5, Mr. Khan was admitted on the 14th of January. Okay, there you have it. Cool. So, if it will allow me, let's move on to the next slide. Strange that they all went to number 1. Normally, when you do these things, they automatically give you the number. Never seen that before. How strange. All right. Let's take an overview then of the OET writing. The writing test requires you to read and analyze the task, to read and analyze case notes, and then to write a letter of referral, of discharge, or of transfer. Those are the 3 types of letter you will encounter. There in the past were more. That is not the case any longer. So referral, discharge, or transfer. We tend to find, again, this is anecdotal, that referral is the more common form of letter, but it could be any of these 3, so be prepared. Referral, discharge, or transfer is what you will find. Thanks for your answers, by the way. Thank you, everyone who provided answers for the quiz. Let's then move on then. 45 minutes is the time that you have, broken down into 2 distinct blocks, the 5 minutes of reading time and the 40 minutes of writing time. In the 5 minutes of reading, you get to read the task, you work out who you're going to write to and what action they need to take. You need to read the case notes to understand key facts about the patient's condition. You'll use the headings and the subheadings to guide you Just because there are headings and subheadings doesn't mean you have to include the information, but just know that the information is there. Okay, that will help guide your eyeballs at the very least. And then you will identify relevant information and work out if it is highly relevant or even quite relevant. If you determine that the information is at all relevant, it will go in your letter. Treat the first 5 minutes as a reading comprehension task. Do not treat the first 5 minutes as a test of your abilities to be a great nurse. This is not the objective in the OET writing section. Your relative merits as a nursing professional are not in question. Your ability to read and understand case notes and then organize them as relevant, repeated and relevant, or not relevant at all is important. Okay, so that's in the 5 minutes. And then in the writing time of 40 minutes, you'll plan out 3, 4, or 5 short paragraphs. That will be your letter. It's the guts of the letter where the 180 to 200 words actually counts. And then you will work your way through each of those paragraphs in about 30 to 35 minutes. Today, of course, we're focused only on the introduction and request paragraphs. Okay, so let's talk about that 5 minutes of reading time. When you're reading, you analyze the task to work out who you're writing the letter to, what action that person needs to take, what key information they require in order to do their job, and what prior knowledge they might have of your patient. Then you read the case notes and you work out what information is relevant, what is repeated but also relevant, and what is not relevant at all. That is today's task. Please answer these 4 questions for me. I'll give you a minute to do so. Who am I writing the letter to? What action do I want the reader to take? What does the reader need to know? And what does the reader already know? Okay, see you in a minute. Timer seemed to go a bit weird there. Okay, so you don't need to take over long on this. As I say, 1 minute will suffice. 1 minute to work out the answers to the questions. Who am I writing to? The answer is the physiotherapist. What action do I want the reader to take? The answer is rehabilitation program. What does the reader need to know? They need to know the patient's needs. And what does the reader already know? The answer is no prior knowledge. Okay, so those are the questions posed and those are the questions answered. The answer can be no prior knowledge, and it's quite common when it's a letter of referral like this. Now we're going to look at the case notes together, and we'll spend some time doing that. You're going to organize them into 3 categories. What is relevant, what's repeated but also relevant, and what's not relevant at all. Why do we make a distinction between relevant and repeated? Because it's not necessarily the case that I need to hear more than once that the patient is diabetic. Although it might be relevant, how many times do I need to know that? I may need to know that the patient is a widower, but again, how many times do I need to know that the patient is a widower? So that's what I'm talking about. Not relevant, of course, simply leave it as it is. On the day of the test, you can do this on the paper. I appreciate that doing this the way that we do now on the screen is difficult, but if you want to tap out your notes into the chat box, great. If you want to just make notes on a separate page, that is also fine. Before we get to it, just remember, as far as the criteria are concerned, why we are doing this sorting between relevant, repeated, and relevant, not relevant at all, relates to content If you want to get top marks for content, you've included key information and you've left nothing important out. And as far as conciseness and clarity is concerned, you are not including irrelevant information. Okay, so that's why we do this. It's very, very important. You've got the case notes now. 5 minutes, please, to organize them in those 3 categories: relevant, repeated and relevant, and not relevant at all. I'll see you soon. Thank you for that. Sorry, my timers are very weird today. I don't know why. You can't hear anything because I'm not saying anything. This class is going on. You're in the right place. Thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure to have your company if you've just joined us. And thank you very much for your input. Let's have a look. Thank you very much for those of you who have shared your note observations with me. Let's see how we've got. Red here for relevant information, red for relevant. So the hospital admission and discharge date, quite a bit of medical background and admission diagnosis, a little bit on the medical progress, quite a lot of nursing management, assessment, and a lot of the discharge plan has been included. In blue, we have repeated information, not too much, a little bit more on nursing management and medical progress, slightly on the admission diagnosis. At this point, if you would like to take a screenshot of the case notes as they have now been organized, I'm very happy for you to do so. Do take a screenshot. Also, at this point, I generally find people say, oh, yeah, no, the clock was frozen because, I don't know, the time has gone weird. People always ask me, hang on a second, why did or didn't you include this, that, or the other? Abdul, you're getting ahead of yourself, my friend. Wait a moment, but thank you for your work so far. Yeah, if there's anything there that you, I don't know, that I've not included that you would like to include. Maybe you want to include the shingles, maybe you want to include anemia, but you tell me. Either try and justify myself or challenge you back. I'm happy to do that. But remember what I said, the first 5 minutes, this organizing of the case notes, is your opportunity to do what is essentially a reading comprehension task. Read the notes, understand what they are, and work out what is going to be relevant for the physiotherapist to know in order for her to do her job. Okay? So I think you've all had an opportunity now to take a screenshot of those case notes organized as they are. And we'll move on then. Thank you. Thanks for those of you who shared the working out on that. The writing time then, the 40 minutes of writing time. First thing I will emphasize is flexibility. It's very, very important that you approach writing in the OET in a flexible way. It rather flies in the face of what a lot of you have been taught, maybe, for example, in different tests that you've taken in the past. The OET is not another English test, it is this English test. So that means you need to be flexible about the number of paragraphs. It means you need to be flexible about the way that you organize the information. Have an open mind. You don't know in advance whether you're going to have to write a letter of transfer or of referral or of discharge. Be open-minded about it and have a flexible approach, and you're much more likely to succeed as a result. If you go in with a fixed notion in your mind that I've got a template and I'm going to write to this template, the first paragraph must be like that, and then like this, and then this, and then this, and the end. Don't do that. It won't serve you well. Be flexible. Our two focuses today are the introduction and request paragraphs. Depending on the case, these can be quite brief. Let's see if that's the case today. We will see. Somebody who is obviously local has asked why the time has been changed to 7 o'clock because it's cold, grey and miserable. You're absolutely right. It is cold, grey and miserable here, but 7 a.m. here is 10 p.m. in the United Kingdom. So better that people in the UK and Western Europe don't have to be up so late to get started. That's why. Anyway, the one later on today is at 5 p.m. Melbourne time, and it shouldn't be so bad. You can make notes. Somebody's asking if we can make notes. You can make notes. Don't worry about it. Okay. Of course, you can't take anything out of the exam room with you, but the organization of the notes, yes, you can underline and stuff. Okay. So I'm sorry. I know I have to get up an hour earlier, but it's okay. It's not so bad. Nice. So our focus is on the introduction and the request today. Let's talk about planning and writing of the letter. Interesting. Somebody's now asking me why the painkiller's been included. I would include the painkiller in the note to the physiotherapist because I think it's relevant for her to know about the state of the man's injury. Okay, so its injury is so bad that he still needs painkillers as required. That's why I would include the information about the painkiller. Okay, not because of any other reason than the pain is still relevant and the pain is still there. All right, so that's why I've included it. I hope that justifies my choice. That was my thinking. Cool, so let's talk about planning and writing. We'll talk about addressing the recipient. There is an outline that we will follow to do that. You'll then take notes and plan. You'll decide how many paragraphs will go into the letter and what information will go into each of those paragraphs. Then you will write, continually checking the relevance and importance of what you are writing, leaving a few minutes at the end to check. It's very important that you do leave time at the end to check because you then have the ability to pick up a few points because of spelling or syntax or word order or something. Just, it's important. So do make sure you do take time to check and proofread. The outline of the letter is as follows. At the top, you start with the title and full name of the recipient and then their job title and full address. Under that, you put the date. Notice that you may have several dates in your letter: date of the letter, date of birth, date of presentation or admission, date of discharge, date of next appointment. My feeling about that is you should try to have a consistency of layout for the dates. That's all. I don't think that's not going to be the thing that will make you pass or fail OET writing, but it just looks tidier. Under the date, you put the reference line, the patient's title, Mr. Mrs. Ms, their full name and their age or their date of birth. Then the salutation, dear Mr. Mrs. Ms. Doctor, and their name, family name, Smith, Brown, whatever. Write the letter and then yours sincerely, if you know their name, yours faithfully if you don't, although I don't think the OET really minds if you mix them up, and then just write the word nurse or charge nurse. That will do. Yeah, should be the discharge date. Discharge date, okay. Date of the letter, just use the date of the test. But the dates which are referred to in the case notes, keep those consistent with what's in the case notes. But I don't like people worrying too much about what date should the letter be. Just do the date that you're writing the letter. But you'll notice that there are dates in the case notes today which you will be referring to in the letter. So that's what you would use, those dates. Okay. So you don't need to make anything up. It's just date of letter is date of the test. Okay. Cool. All the information you need is there for you on the left-hand side. Now I'd like you to take 90 seconds, please, to write the letter outline. I hope the timer works properly. 90 seconds. Thanks very much. As expected, all of the timers on my slides today are very weird. It's a bit like the first exercise, which was number one, number one, number one, number one, number one. Anyway, never mind. These things are sent to try us. Thank you for sharing, for those of you who did. Let's have a look and see what the form should be. Ms. Loretta Pasquale, physiotherapist, Templestowe District Medical Centre, 43 Anderson Street, Templestowe, 12/01/2018. That's my preferred format. It doesn't really matter, but as I said, you may have multiple dates, and this is the tidy way of doing it. Then the reference line, re Mr. George Shen, 54 years old, or aged 54, or you could put his date of birth. Dear Ms. Pasquale, comma, write the letter, then yours sincerely, comma, ward nurse. That will suffice. Now, let me just say something about the position of the date. The date might go above the words Ms. Loretta Pasquale or below the word Templestowe. The reference line may go above the salutation or below the salutation. It doesn't really matter that much. This is not where you will pass or fail your letter, but it's good to know that there is a small amount of flexibility in these things. And I said previously, if you sign off yours faithfully instead of yours sincerely, not the end of the world either. Okay, so that's the outline of the letter. Now let's talk about the guts of the letter, the 180 to 200 words that you're going to be writing beautifully. Let's start by talking about how you plan and check the case notes. You are responsible for deciding how many paragraphs will go into the letter, and you will decide what information will go into each of those paragraphs, okay? Today our focus is on those two, the introduction and the request or action. For the introduction, the question you ask yourself is, well, what is the key information the recipient needs? Keep it very brief. And for the request or action, you need to express your appreciation and restate what you want the recipient to do. Now, 90 seconds to look at the case notes again and decide information that you're going to use for the introduction sentence, and then information you'll use for the request. Okay, I hope this time works. 90 seconds to do that little organization for me. As I suspected, the timer isn't working. Take another 20 seconds, please. All right, thank you very much. Thank you for your thoughts. Okay, let's have a look. So for the introduction, simple. Patient details, the name, George Shen, admission details, post-right knee surgery and impaired mobility, and then medical background, total knee replacement and the date of that, and severe difficulty with mobility, right lower extremity. for the request and action, fairly straightforward, needs acute comprehensive rehabilitation. So we're going to do these in two parts. The introduction, and I appreciate a couple of you have already very kindly sent me your introductions, which is great. But let's do the introduction. Language you might want to use for the introduction, things like Ms. Jones was recently hospitalized, Mr. Smith will be discharged or transferred, Mr. Smith requires or Mr. Smith is in need of. On the 5th of March 2017, Mr. Smith presented to, okay, things like that. They are the notes, and you've now got 2 minutes. I'm not going to trust that timer. You've now got 2 minutes to write the introduction. It's not that long. I will see you in 2 minutes. Good luck. Thanks a lot. Sorry about the timers. Beyond my control, I'm afraid. Cool. Thanks, and thank you very much for sharing your ideas. Here, as I say, it's not that long. Mr. Shen requires your professional assistance for his ongoing difficulties with mobility following recent surgery. Who is the patient? What's the main issue? Why am I writing to you? Those are the three bases that you really need to cover in your introduction. Okay, so there's your introduction. Now let's go on to the request. Language you might want to use: kindly, please, and I would be grateful. Those are the discharge notes. And again, I'm not going to work on that timer. I don't think it's going to cooperate with me, but you have 2 minutes now to write the request. Okay. Okay, very nice, thank you. Every letter requires an introduction. Every letter requires a request. It's how you structure the letter, mostly in the middle of that, that requires the flexibility. As you've seen, for any of you who've done these classes before, some letters have a very long request paragraph. This is not the case in this letter. The more substantial paragraphs are in the middle of the letter. Some letters have quite long, quite wordy request paragraphs because you're asking 3, 4, sometimes 5 things of the reader of the letter. So whether you're a doctor, a nurse, an OT, a physio, introduction and request are both essential. Let's have a look then at mine. It's very short. Kindly provide acute and comprehensive rehabilitation of Mr. Shen's right knee. So here we have it, the whole letter. You might want to take a screenshot now of the whole letter from yay to nay, from the address at the top through to the date down to the end where it says nurse. You'll see that the second and third paragraphs in this letter are the most substantial in terms of heft. So the way that the patient presents is focus of paragraph 2, and relevant medical and social background goes here into paragraph 3. I'm sorry, paragraph, I'm misreading the numbers of the paragraphs, but you get the idea. Take a good look at that, take a screenshot, and then what you can do afterwards is compare the organized case notes with the actual letter. I will show you the case notes again at the end, okay? Just so that you can get another look at that. Right, let's take it back now to the criteria and how you're scored. Language is our focus, including tenses, which are both active and passive, and the use of linking words. So if we look at the structure of the letter from the introduction to the request, you'll often find that the introduction is done in an active voice. I am writing to refer Mrs. Aiken, who needs assistance. And the request is often done in an active voice. Could you kindly assist Ms. Aiken with a rehabilitation plan? So those are frequently done in an active voice. This is not a rule, this is just an observation. I will show you the letter again, I will show you the case notes again, but let me just get this done first and then we'll swing back. So I'm frequently using an active voice at the beginning and the end because I'm addressing directly to my colleague. In the middle, I've got a mixture of both. Again, like I say, this is not a rule, but you will often use passive voice, things like Mr. Jones was admitted to St. Andrews 2 weeks ago. This is not important who did the admission. I could also be active. She recently presented to the clinic. It's fine. I don't lose anything as far as the overall formality is concerned, or as far as the efficacy of what I'm writing is concerned. So linking words, the other thing that we're talking about here, useful linking words that you've got in relation to what we call the function of the language, for reason, for the order of importance, for addition, and for result. You might want to take a screenshot here. You'll often see, I will often see as a teacher, that people always rely on the same kind of linking words. Try and expand your net a little bit. Try and take on linking words that maybe you don't depend on all the time. Just show a nice depth of vocabulary. Somebody's asked a question about misspellings. If you genuinely don't know how a word is spelt, there's not a lot you can do about it. You'll know that in the OET reading, they're very, very hard line about spelling, but not so much in the OET listening. In the writing, they're not overly concerned about spelling if it does not interfere with the understanding of the piece of writing that you've actually submitted, okay? If you see something that's obviously wrong and you want to change it, yes, just strike it through and write it so it's clear. Leader, that introduction is okay. I would, instead of writing after his total knee replacement, following, maybe would be a better word. Okay, cool. So those are the linking words. Let's move forwards. So for example, here we've got some nice example sentences. As a result of his hernia, as a consequence of her confinement, she developed, due to Mr. Allen's allergies, he needs to. He refuses to undergo surgery, hence there are only two options. She cannot walk independently and therefore requires, and Mrs. Jones has 5 children and a busy home life, thus bed rest is difficult. Thus is one of those words. I honestly, I never use the word thus. It's a bit of an IELTS word, I find, but it's okay. I mean, it's a perfectly legitimate word, but don't think that you need to reach for the most obscure words in the world in order to impress the examiner. That's not how it works. Okay. What about these ones? As he has assistance at home, because of his history of falls, it is advised that Mazatla was admitted for, since a series of developments in her private life, Mrs. Baker has suffered severe bouts of. Okay. She also requires an additional aspect of the required care is, and then it is essential that the patient alerts us if the police have been informed of the dangers in Ms. White's home environment, but most significantly, we are concerned that, and the fatty liver that the patient presents with appears to be primarily diet-related, as he's a non-drinker. So screenshot time, if you would like that. That's a nice way of organizing and linking your ideas together with those ideas highlighted in blue for your predilection. Okay, nice. So let's now do that quiz. It's 2 minutes. I'm not going to trust the timer on this, but I'm going to give you 2 minutes to have a go at this quiz. The linking words you require are in the box on the left-hand side. I'll see you in 2 minutes. So thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks for your answers. Let's have a look. So, Mr. Grand was recently hospitalized due to severe abdominal pain. There you go, was recently hospitalized, the past simple form there. So change the sentence to a passive sentence. The hospital admitted Ms. Andrea Ford on February 3rd this year. Ms. Ford was admitted to hospital on 3rd of February this year. And then the linking words in the bottom. Ms. Atlas was admitted to Kingsmith Hospital on the 20th of January 2019 for a total knee replacement, TKR, due to worsening osteoarthritis and difficulty with mobility. Okay. For further information, my friends, look no further than our website. It's excellent. Click on the writing tab at the top and you have access to all of the practice materials. Keep up to date with the OET, with test dates and so on at the official OET website. Podcasts, I always recommend multiple podcasts from different networks. I don't know that I would start with the discharge date in the introduction. I don't think that that's, remember you've got in the introduction of your letter, I will put up the case notes in a second. In introduction, 3 main things. Who is the patient? What's the main issue? Why am I writing to you? Bear that in mind. Let me turn my camera on, so I keep forgetting. Podcasts should be from many different sources, from the CBC in Canada, the BBC in Britain, the ABC in Australia, NPR in the United States. For reading, it's free, it's great, Science Daily and other things too. Don't forget to offer the mini mock test, which is excellent if you want to practice and see how you're doing as far as your overall performance is concerned. And the power package, for those of you on YouTube who've not yet decided which way to go, let me strongly recommend the power package, which is going to be a very, very good place to start. A lot of people want to go back and look at the case notes and the letter. So there's the letter. If you've not yet taken a picture of the letter, there you go. I'll give you a few seconds and then I'm going to go back and check the organized case notes. Okay. 5, 4, 3. What kind of podcast? Any podcast related to health. And there are lots now because of coronavirus, but even so, any podcast related to health will be fine. Stay on topic. And there are the case notes, my friends. I hope that's been helpful. Okay. There you go. I like to be as helpful as I can be. Any other questions I can answer? Anything else on your minds? Anything else not clear? My pleasure. I hope you found it useful. I'm grateful if you could assist with distance. No. It would be weird to describe his rehabilitation in that way. You provide somebody with acute and comprehensive rehabilitation. I know it's sometimes difficult to find the right words, but you get the idea. What you don't want to do, and this is a frequent problem, is repeat almost word for word in the introduction what you then write in the request. And that comes across as very strange. Okay, so try not to do that, if at all possible. Okay. Anything else? I know a couple of people were saying I was speaking a bit quickly. I hope that my speed wasn't too bad. I try not to speak too fast, but if I occasionally do, my apologies. Anything else? Any other questions? Introduction, 3 main elements. Who is the patient? What's the main issue? Why am I writing to you? Make sure you include those. Colin recently adverb abused in past tense, in present tense. Yeah, well, recently generally refers to something that's already happened. I recently visited Mrs. Smith in her home and found her to be entirely unpleasant. Thank you. You have a marvelous day. Sleep well. Okay. I'm not going to go to bed. I'm going to go and have a cup of tea. But Those of you who are going to go to bed, maybe drink a Horlicks and go to bed. Sleep, the sleep of angels. Yeah, I need to, my fingers are really cold. All right, listen, good. Enjoy going to work. And thanks everyone for joining us, whether you're on Zoom. Thank you. For those of you on YouTube as well, thank you. This is yours sincerely. Yours sincerely. Never yours, plural, yours sincerely. Okay. All right, everyone, thanks so much. Enjoy what is left of your day, or if you've got the whole day ahead of you like me, may be a productive one. Stay safe, everyone, and I'll see you all again very soon. Cheers, bye-bye.